In the wake of Donald Trump's tweets about Mika looks and the wrestling video showing him body slamming a guy with a CNN logo for a head, some journalists ramping up their own criticism of the president.
Some of the words are pretty nasty. Folks, if these actions and this language was being used by a leader in a different country, our State Department would be saying, that country is inching towards authoritarianism.
It was silly, harmless nonsense, yet people lost their minds. Sorry, did I say people? I meant humorless libs who ignore real incitement but take issue with this.
These nasty personal tweets against individual cable news anchors or those more broadly seeking to undermine any critical journalism, I'm not sure how that serves the soldier in harm's way, or the hungry child in the inner city or in Appalachia, or the unemployed factory worker in the decimated factory town.
Megan, even most commentators at Fox said that the tweets about Mika Brzezinski and her IQ and a facelift were not a good idea. But has there been a media overreaction when we hear some of these?
Well, I'm the first person to say I work on a predominantly women's show. I think men take it as a general rule, don't talk about cosmetic surgery in women ever. I think that's a good rule to live by. But I do think CNN going after the person, some random internet person who made the gif of, the wrestling match against CNN, going after someone and basically trying to blackmail them into saying nice things about CNN and threatening to expose their personal information sets a very dangerous precedent that you can be someone who's making jokes online, and then you're going to have a national, organization calling you and saying, hey, I'm going to expose all your information to the internet unless you apologize to us, is very, very dangerous.
And let's pick up on that. So some critics were using words like blackmail. CNN denies this and denies threatening this guy. He's a user of Reddit, the online message board. He created this wrestling video, a version of which Trump retweeted, and he apologized, and he also apologized for putting up racist and anti-Semitic posts. And CNN said, well, we won't tell anybody who you are as long as you stick with that apology. Was that a threat?
It sounded like a threat. I don't know for sure that it was, and I think it was self-inflicted wound for CNN. I used to work there. I have respect for people there. But I think when you go back to Jim Acosta calling it a fake news conference, and then getting some of the facts wrong, where he said, about how many intelligence agencies had come up with this Russia assessment, and he sort of, calls it a fake news conference for the president, and then kind of sloppy with what the president said about, look, the New York Times had to correct that there were 17 intelligence agencies that made this determination.
It's actually 4.
So it was actually 4.
Yeah.
So it sounded like the president was more right than he was wrong. Here's the bigger point. I'll agree with something Mo said a couple of minutes ago, and I think to say something positive about someone at CNN, I think Jake Tapper is right in that last point there. And it feeds into what Mo's been saying, which is, okay, a little bit of media bashing. Sometimes it goes a bit far with this president, number one. Number two, it can get dangerous. There are people at CNN saying they're under threat. Let's be careful with all this. But finally, how does any of this help, as Jake said?
Right.
The jobs issue, the health care. That's what the president got elected on.
I tried to press this point with Kellyanne. Isn't he, the president, also adding to the distractions? But some people thought the CNN wrestling video was funny. CNN says it encourages violence against reporters. And Jeff Zucker, the network president, telling the New York Times he's trying to bully us. We're not going to let him intimidate us. Where do you come down?
No, I think it was uncalled for. I think it was unseemly. I think it was unpresidential. And I think we are living, we were talking about this in the newsroom earlier, in the green room earlier as well. We saw there is a move right now towards overheated rhetoric that is pushing some people over the edge. And we saw some really bad behavior at Trump rallies. We saw some really bad behavior in rallies or in the protests in Berkeley. We saw the tragic situation with Congressman Scalise, right? And we're seeing more and more rhetoric like this. You can push back on the media without threatening to body slam them, right? What people were saying, the rhetoric that people say induced the attack on Scalise and the members of Congress, that video was just a visual representation of the same kind of rhetoric. It all has to tamp down.
Well, I just add that he wasn't threatening to body slam. It was, some people thought, a spoof, but I understand the visual.